Zyra floated silently in the observation deck of the Violia starship Luminaris, her three large, violet eyes fixed on the planet below. Earth, a planet full of strange colors, moving waters and beings that lived in ways she could barely imagine. She had read the reports, studied the data, and watched countless videos sent back by earlier expeditions, but nothing prepared her for seeing humans in real life. The humans were fascinating. They moved with a combination of clumsiness and grace, their bodies so soft yet so capable. They laughed, they argued, they created objects for purposes that seemed absurd to her at first glance, and yet she could sense intelligence and ingenuity in every motion. Zyra leaned closer to the glass, wishing she could shrink herself to move among them unnoticed. Her curiosity, as always, overpowered caution. Zyra's mentor had warned her that some human behaviors were private, sacred, and not meant to be observed directly. But the young alien's mind could not resist the urge to see everything firsthand. Today, she had a special mission, to understand how humans made new life. Zyra adjusted her recording device, a small orb hovering beside her. "Begin observation," she whispered to herself. Her voice was melodic, with a tone that humans might call soft. Down on Earth, in a small blue house surrounded by flowering plants, a human woman named Leela was carefully arranging a nursery. The room smelled of fresh paint, soft blankets, and a faint hint of lavender. Leela moved with practiced precision, placing a tiny crib in the center and stacking soft toys around it. Her partner, a man named John, was assembling a stroller near the window. Zyra's eyes widened. The humans were preparing for something that had no mechanical or artificial aspect. She realized they were preparing for a new life. And unlike her species, which relied on controlled incubators and chemical gestation, these humans, they did this naturally, with care, attention, and emotion. "Humans really do that?" Zyra murmured to her recording orb. "Can I try?" She immediately paused, realizing the absurdity of her words. Of course, she could not participate, at least not in the way humans did. But the question lingered in her mind. How did beings so fragile manage to create new life in a universe so full of dangers? The humans below seemed unaware of her gaze. Leela hummed a soft tune, smoothing the blanket in the crib. John scratched his head, looking slightly unsure, as if he were trying to follow a very complicated set of instructions without a manual. Zyra tilted her head. Humans, she realized, were full of imperfections, and yet those imperfections made them brilliant. Over the next few days, Zyra observed the humans more closely. She watched how they interacted with their families, how they planned meals, organized clothes, and prepared spaces for an infant who had not yet arrived. Every detail was meaningful. Every decision reflected love, care, and foresight. On Violia, such processes were sterile, calculated, and emotionless. But here, emotion drove every action. One evening, Zyra noticed Leela and John sitting together on a small couch, holding hands and talking in low voices. She could not hear their words, but she could see their expressions: anticipation, worry, excitement, and joy. Zyra's three hearts beat faster as she realized that human reproduction was not just biological, it was deeply emotional. The act of creating life was intertwined with hope, fear, and connection. Zyra made a note in her observation logs: humans are not merely biological machines. They invest themselves fully, emotionally, mentally, socially, into reproduction. This is extraordinary. As the days passed, Zyra tried to understand every aspect of human preparation. She watched humans shop for items called diapers, which were designed to contain waste for infants. She observed humans practicing gentle touch, rocking babies in their arms, and singing lullabies. These behaviors were foreign, yet somehow beautiful in their simplicity. One morning, Zyra witnessed a particularly astonishing moment. Leela was kneeling by the crib, whispering softly, while John placed a tiny mobile above it. The mobile had small stars, moons, and planets hanging from strings. Zyra tilted her head. Why would humans attach objects above a sleeping infant? Then she realized, humans were teaching even the smallest beings to observe, to imagine, to wonder. They nurtured curiosity from the very beginning of life. Zyra's mind raced. Her own species relied on programmed growth modules. Infants were monitored constantly, given nutrients, and raised in predictable patterns. Emotion played little role. But humans seemed to grow life like a garden, with care, attention, and creativity. Curiosity drove Zyra closer. She had always been fascinated by biology, but human biology was astonishingly complex. She observed the way humans prepared for conception, though she kept her distance to respect their privacy. The rituals were private, intimate, and deeply meaningful. Zyra's antennae twitched with fascination. Humans willingly exposed themselves to risk and uncertainty to create life, a concept almost alien to her species. During one observation session, Zyra noticed John helping Leela stand after a long day. Leela's face was flushed with fatigue, but she smiled. Zyra recorded the moment carefully. Humans support each other physically and emotionally during reproduction. This is a behavior unknown in my species. The more Zyra watched, the more she understood that human reproduction was not just about survival. It was about partnership, trust, patience, and love. Humans embraced unpredictability. They welcomed the unknown. Every human action, every tiny choice seemed to acknowledge that life itself was miraculous. Zyra tried to imagine the experience herself. Could she, an alien from a species that measured reproduction in formulas and cycles, understand the human approach? Could she ever participate? Her antennae flickered nervously. She realized some experiences were not meant for observation alone. They required participation, empathy, and emotional vulnerability. One evening, as Earth's sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Zyra's observation orb floated beside her. "I understand," she whispered. "I understand why humans treasure life. I understand why it is sacred and why it is beautiful." Zyra took a deep breath, inhaling the filtered earth air circulating in her observation deck. She imagined what it would be like to experience human life firsthand. The laughter, the struggles, the small triumphs. She knew she could never fully participate in reproduction the human way, but she could study, learn, and respect it. She could carry this understanding back to Violia and teach others that life, in all its forms, was worth celebrating. As night fell on Earth, Zyra continued her vigil. She watched Leela and John quietly reading to a young child who had just been born. The room glowed softly from a small lamp. The infant's tiny hands grasped at the air, the soft coos echoing like music to Zyra's ears. She felt something new, something she could not fully explain, but it was warm, deep, and powerful. Humans, she realized, carried life not only in their bodies but in their hearts. Her recording orb blinked. "Observation complete for today," she said softly, yet in truth she could not stop watching. Humans were endlessly fascinating. They were unpredictable, emotional, and deeply intelligent. They nurtured life with patience, creativity, and courage. Zyra understood that this was only the beginning of her journey. The galaxy had many wonders, but humans were something extraordinary. Something worth studying, something worth admiring, something worth protecting. And Zyra knew, in that quiet moment, that she had only just begun to understand the true miracle of humanity. Zyra returned to the observation deck of the Luminaris every day, her violet eyes wide with curiosity. Humans fascinated her more than any other species in the galaxy. Every action they took, every emotion they displayed, seemed to contain layers of meaning she could barely understand. After days of watching from afar, Zyra received special permission from her mentors to get closer, safely, of course. They allowed her to observe the humans in controlled conditions and to interact with their environment, but not with their private moments. This was a compromise she accepted eagerly. She wanted to learn more than ever. Her first lesson came with a trip to a local park. Humans called it a playground. Children ran and laughed, some climbing structures made of metal and wood, others swinging high into the sky. Their joy was contagious. Zyra tried to mimic them, floating above the ground with small leaps, her limbs moving in patterns she had never tried before. She laughed quietly at her own clumsiness, a sound that made nearby birds flutter in surprise. Zyra's attention turned to a group of parents watching the children. She observed the humans' careful supervision, a hand ready to catch a falling child, a voice encouraging a hesitant climb, a soft hug after a minor fall. These actions were small, almost invisible, yet they carried great significance. Humans protected and guided each other, even in play. In her journal, Zyra wrote, "Humans teach through experience, guidance, and emotional support. Their methods are indirect but highly effective. They nurture curiosity and resilience simultaneously." Next, Zyra focused on understanding human preparation for life in more practical ways. She visited a local household under supervision, allowed to observe the organization of the home, the way humans planned meals, cleaned spaces, and managed supplies. She was astonished by the layers of thought behind each action. Every toy, every blanket, every small object in the nursery was chosen for comfort, safety, and education. Zyra's 3 hearts beat faster as she studied these details. On Violia, life was arranged systematically, with almost no room for improvisation. But humans embraced improvisation, creativity, and flexibility. They responded to unexpected events with patience and ingenuity rather than rigid protocols. One afternoon, Zyra observed Leela preparing a meal while John assembled a small crib. Zyra noticed the careful steps Leela took, washing her hands, arranging food in small portions, tasting each ingredient for flavor. She realized that humans considered not only the physical needs of infants, but also the sensory and emotional aspects of growth. Food was nourishment, yes, but also comfort, discovery, and even joy. Zyra decided to attempt her own version of human nurturing. Her first experiments were small and safe. She planted seeds in patterns, mimicking the way humans might arrange toys or objects for a child. She created miniature simulations of nurturing, soft cushions for objects she called life representations, and gentle vibrations to mimic human touch. Though the beings she cared for were not alive in the human sense, Zyra treated them with the same patience and attention she had observed. At first, the simulations failed. Cushions toppled, seeds didn't sprout as expected, and vibrations sent the miniature objects flying. Zyra frowned, frustrated but determined. She remembered a phrase she had overheard from Leela: "Patience is part of love." She repeated the phrase to herself, trying to understand its meaning beyond words. Days of trial and error slowly bore fruit. Seeds grew in neat patterns, small cushions stayed in place, and the vibrations created gentle, soothing motions. Zyra realized that patience, attention, and repetition were essential in nurturing. Humans were not perfect, but their care produced extraordinary results. Her experiments grew more ambitious. Zyra tried to emulate human interactions using holographic projections of children. She practiced speaking softly, encouraging motion, and responding to simulated needs. She even attempted lullabies, her melodic voice filling the small room in gentle waves. Though the simulations could not truly respond, Zyra felt a deep satisfaction in the process. Through these exercises, Zyra began to understand humans on a deeper level. Reproduction was not just a biological process. It was a combination of guidance, education, protection, creativity, and love. Humans invested themselves fully in the growth of new life, from the tiniest infant to the young adult discovering the world. Every action, however small, mattered. One evening, Zyra had a breakthrough. She observed John holding a newborn baby while Leela gently placed soft toys in the crib. The baby cooed, eyes wide with curiosity, reaching for the objects. John adjusted the baby's position carefully, supporting its head, while Leela encouraged exploration. Zyra felt a strange warmth in her chest, an emotion she did not have words for, but one that resonated deeply. This is extraordinary, she thought. Humans create life and then teach it, protect it, and inspire it all at once. They balance vulnerability with strength, curiosity with caution. They embrace imperfection yet achieve perfection in the growth of their children. Zyra realized she had never seen anything like this in the galaxy. Her mentors asked for a detailed report on her observations. Zyra struggled to put her feelings into words. How could she convey the combination of patience, creativity, emotional depth, and ingenuity humans displayed? She decided to focus on actions rather than emotions. She described the small gestures, guiding hands, soothing voices, creative arrangements, repeated trials, and improvisations. Each action, she wrote, contributed to the success of human nurturing. Zyra also reflected on her own learning. She had started with curiosity, observing humans from a distance. Then she had attempted to imitate them, using safe simulations. Through experimentation, she had begun to internalize human methods and values. She realized that learning from humans required humility, patience, and imagination. Her experiments caught the attention of other young alien scholars. They were amazed at how much Zyra had learned through observation and simulation. They asked her to teach them, and Zyra agreed. Together, they created small nurturing simulations using seeds, cushions, holographic images, and gentle vibrations. Zyra guided her peers, showing them how to combine care with creativity, attention with patience. As the days passed, Zyra's understanding deepened. She observed that humans did not rely solely on instinct or calculation, they relied on connection. Connection between parents and children, between caregivers and communities, between individuals and their environment. Reproduction and nurturing were acts of collaboration, involving countless small choices and interactions. One evening, Zyra returned to the observation deck to watch a quiet moment. Leela and John were sitting together on the floor, a baby nestled between them. They whispered to each other, smiled, and occasionally glanced at the baby, making sure it was comfortable. Zyra felt a surge of admiration. Humans were extraordinary not because they were strong, fast, or technologically advanced, but because they dared to create life in a chaotic, unpredictable universe, and then nurture it with love and patience. Zyra wrote in her journal, "Humans are brave. They embrace uncertainty and imperfection. They create, protect, teach, and inspire. They are worthy of respect and admiration." Her simulation experiments continued, but now she approached them with a new mindset. She was no longer trying simply to copy humans. She wanted to understand the philosophy behind their actions. Why did humans care so deeply? Why did they invest so much time, energy, and emotion into the growth of new life? Zyra realized that humans understood something her species had not fully grasped. Life itself was a miracle, and nurturing it required both courage and imagination. One day, Zyra attempted something daring. She arranged a series of small holographic children in a simulated environment with cushions, toys, and gentle vibrations. Then she introduced an unexpected challenge. One of the holographic children moved in a way that could topple the others. Zyra's task was to respond in real time, guiding, correcting, and protecting without using rigid rules. At first, the simulation was chaotic. Holographic figures collided, cushions fell, and vibrations caused small disruptions. Zyra's antennae twitched with frustration. But she remembered the humans' patience, their creativity, their ability to adapt. Slowly, she adjusted her actions, responding intuitively rather than mechanically. By the end of the day, the simulation was stable. All the holographic children were safe, exploring and interacting with their environment. Zyra exhaled a deep, satisfied breath. She had not only recreated aspects of human nurturing, but had also internalized their approach: patience, flexibility, creativity, and connection. Zyra realized that she had grown in ways she could not have predicted. Humans had taught her not just about reproduction, but about life itself. Their courage, adaptability, and dedication to growth were lessons she would carry back to Violia. As night fell, Zyra watched Leela and John quietly reading to their child. The room glowed softly from a small lamp, the baby's tiny hands reaching out, eyes wide with wonder. Zyra's violet eyes glistened. She understood now that humans did not simply survive, they thrived. They faced uncertainty with courage, nurtured life with creativity, and celebrated existence in ways that few other species could comprehend. And Zyra knew that her journey was far from over. The humans had much more to teach, and she was ready to learn. Zyra floated above Earth one last time, watching the planet bathed in the soft light of dawn. The ocean sparkled, the forests swayed in gentle winds, and human cities slowly came alive with movement and sound. For weeks, she had studied humans, observed their families, and experimented with human-like nurturing. She had learned more than she ever imagined, and now it was time to share her discoveries with the galaxy. Her ship, the Luminaris, hummed quietly as she prepared her presentation for the Galactic Council. Zyra had gathered recordings, logs, and simulations of human behavior, along with her own observations and experiments. She wanted the Council to understand what she had come to know. Humans were extraordinary, not just because of their biology or intelligence, but because of their courage, creativity, and emotional depth. The council chamber on Violia was vast and circular, filled with beings of countless shapes, colors, and sizes. Zyra floated into the center, her violet eyes scanning the assembly. She felt a twinge of nervousness, a sensation she had never experienced before. She reminded herself of the humans she had watched, who faced challenges and uncertainties every day with bravery. Drawing strength from their example, Zyra began her presentation. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice clear and steady, "I present my findings from Earth, a planet inhabited by humans. My observations focus on their reproduction, nurturing, and the unique qualities that make them exceptional. She activated her holographic display. Images of human families appeared, showing parents preparing nurseries, interacting with children, and teaching them through play and guidance. The council members leaned forward, intrigued by the colorful displays and the evident care humans invested in every action. Zyra continued, "Humans approach reproduction not merely as a biological function, but as a process of emotional and social investment. From conception to childhood, they nurture life with creativity, patience, and ingenuity. Their actions may appear imperfect, chaotic, or fragile, yet the results are extraordinary." One council member, a tall being with translucent skin, raised a tentacle. "Are you suggesting that humans succeed because of emotion rather than efficiency?" it asked. Zyra nodded. "Precisely. On Violia, we rely on controlled processes, calculated outcomes, and rigid protocols. Humans, in contrast, embrace unpredictability. They take risks. They create life and then guide it with empathy, support, and imagination. Their successes are the result of courage and collaboration, not simple efficiency." She showed simulations she had created, demonstrating her attempts to replicate human nurturing. Holographic children interacted with objects, learned from mistakes, and responded to gentle guidance. "These simulations," Zyra explained, "illustrate the principles humans use: patience, flexibility, creativity, and connection. I have applied these principles in my own experiments, and the results are remarkable." A murmur spread across the council chamber. Many members had never seen such a combination of complexity and emotional depth in any species. Zyra smiled faintly, feeling the excitement of discovery. "Humans teach us an important lesson," she continued. "They show that growth is not simply a matter of survival or efficiency. Growth requires courage, the courage to face uncertainty, to make mistakes, and to nurture life despite risks. They show that emotional connection is as powerful as technology or strength. They create life not only biologically but emotionally, socially, and creatively." Zyra's words were followed by a series of video clips. A child learning to walk, a parent patiently encouraging them, a family planting a garden together, teaching cooperation and care, a small infant reaching for a mobile, discovering patterns, colors, and motion. The council watched, fascinated. Zyra's voice narrated each scene, highlighting the small yet meaningful choices humans made every day. One council member, a floating being with rings of light, asked, "And what does this mean for our understanding of life?" Zyra answered thoughtfully, "It means that intelligence and strength alone do not define a species' greatness. Humans combine intelligence, emotion, and creativity to nurture life. They inspire growth, not through force, but through care, encouragement, and imagination. They teach us that vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength when combined with connection and courage." The chamber grew quiet. Zyra could sense that the council members were reflecting on her words. For some, it was a revelation. For others, it was a reminder of the importance of empathy and collaboration. Zyra felt a deep satisfaction. Humans, whom many in the galaxy underestimated, had shown qualities that even advanced civilizations could admire. After the presentation, Zyra demonstrated some of her simulation experiments. Council members watched as holographic children explored their environments, learning through trial and error, guided by gentle interactions. Zyra explained each principle: patience, attention, adaptation, encouragement, and creativity. The council members were impressed. Some asked Zyra to teach their own scholars these methods. Others suggested adopting human-inspired techniques in their own societies, using patience and connection to nurture growth and innovation. Zyra realized that her work had not only illuminated humanity's greatness, but had the potential to inspire the entire galaxy. Later, alone in the observation deck, Zyra looked down at Earth. The humans were going about their lives, unaware of her admiration. She remembered Leela and John, quietly reading to their child, sharing smiles, whispers, and gentle touches. She remembered the children laughing in the park, the parents guiding them with care, and the small moments of courage and curiosity that defined every human life. Zyra reflected on her own journey. She had begun with curiosity, observing humans from a distance. Then she had experimented, imitating their nurturing behaviors in simulations. She had learned not only techniques but also philosophy, the belief that life was sacred, that growth required courage, and that connection made all the difference. Her mentors had asked what she had learned most of all. Zyra realized the answer was simple. Humans embody the strength of vulnerability, the power of curiosity, and the beauty of connection. These qualities, more than any technology or formula, made humans remarkable. Determined to honor this understanding, Zyra decided to return to Earth one last time before leaving. She hovered invisibly over a small playground, watching children play and parents guide them. A young boy stumbled, and his mother caught him just in time, whispering encouragement. Zyra's three hearts felt warmth she could not name. She realized that admiration alone was not enough. Humans' way of life deserved respect, protection, and learning. Zyra spoke softly into her recording orb. Humans are not perfect, they make mistakes. They face dangers, but they rise, adapt, and nurture. They thrive in ways that no other species I have studied can match. They are extraordinary in their courage, creativity, and connection. As night fell over Earth, Zyra prepared to leave. The planet glowed softly beneath her, lights twinkling in cities, rivers reflecting the moon, forests dark and quiet. She felt a mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness because she would miss observing humans firsthand. Hope because she knew their ways had value beyond their planet. They could inspire an entire galaxy. Back on Violia, Zyra's report was published. Scholars from countless civilizations studied her findings. Humans were no longer merely an interesting species. They were an example of bravery, creativity, and emotional intelligence. Other species began experimenting with human-inspired nurturing techniques, adapting patience, connection, and creativity into their own methods of teaching, growing, and raising young. Zyra continued her work, but her focus shifted. She no longer studied humans from a distance. She began to think about how to bring humanity's lessons to the galaxy, how to show that life in all its forms deserved care, patience, and imagination. Humans had taught her that even the smallest acts of connection could ripple across time and space, creating growth and innovation far beyond what any calculation could predict. One day, Zyra returned to her favorite observation spot, looking at Earth bathed in sunlight. She saw humans planting gardens, children laughing, parents teaching, families sharing meals, and communities helping each other. Every small act was a reflection of courage, care, and creativity. She realized that humans did not just survive, they flourished, and Zyra smiled. She had learned that admiration was not passive, it was active. It was teaching, sharing, experimenting, and celebrating life. Humans had opened her eyes to possibilities she had never imagined, showing that even in a vast, unpredictable universe, life could be nurtured, celebrated, and inspired. As the Luminaris prepared for its journey back to Violia, Zyra whispered to the stars, "Thank you, humans. You have shown me what it means to truly grow, to truly care, and to truly live." The ship's engines hummed and Earth faded into the distance. Zyra's heart, her three hearts, beat steadily with a new understanding. Humans were more than a species. They were a lesson, a wonder, a spark of hope in the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same.